Hello, this is Dr. Bob Smith, chiropractic internist, again here to talk with you about healthy with benefits. A lot has changed in science over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Most of us remember being told back in school that science was doubling at an increasingly rapid rate, and the information boom had exploded, and technology was only going to magnify that, and that was what was talked about in future shock and the third wave and other such information. Well, reality is science has continued to move. Healthcare has often stayed, sadly, 20 to 30 years behind the curve. And I want to explain some things about how science not only justifies the concept of chiropractic internist, but points to why this should probably be used by more people as a perspective. It's not just functional medicine approach, it actually has its roots in orthomolecular medicine. To explain this real simply, it means with the original instructors that were teaching this program, Dr. Cessna, Dr. Kessinger, who I was actually a student with in class, talked about the fact that you have to continue to learn new information and replace old outdated information with newer models. Well, in the case of scientific investigation as it relates to physiology, nutrition, and where we're going to now, which is referred to as big data, I think you'll begin to understand what we're talking about. The triage theory by Dr. Bruce Ames basically simply states that if you have someone with minimal nutrition availability, your body will do everything it possibly can to help you stay as healthy as you can. So it will predilect and procure the nutrients for the most critical things to keep you going. The problem with that is in this critical selection process, the micronutrients that you don't have sufficiency of, you'll build tissue that's not built to its highest possibility. This has to do with evolutionary biology and the fact that we're still evolving, and as long as you're alive, you continue to evolve. If you combine this with the idea that mathematics and the Mandelbrot set basically came about with the idea of iterating a component of a subset into the equation again, and it gives some predictive values. What they have determined in looking at this is nature uses fractals for things that we don't typically think of as being mathematical. And that's because the perspective is entirely different, and that's to realize that things appear to have organization and not just be some spontaneous generated nothing. That sort of bothers some people. Others are perfectly acceptable to the fact that there is some design appearance to this. When you look at the fact that this old ink blot that was around in the 1700s that talked about what a fractal looked like, this is actually an example of a fractal model. It's a reoccurrence of the same pattern again and again. Well, in the case of using that on a computer simulation, you can produce a model that basically shows a line that appears to be actual mountain range and actually have cliffs and things like that. This is all a mathematical model produced by a computer. Now, what's interesting about this is real time examination of mountain ranges show the same phenomena. When you realize that artistic pictures, in this case good and evil, ends up having a mixing that changes the entire pattern. And then if you look at a fractal that's using a specific type of the Mandelbrot set, and you find these are all reoccurring of the same thing. If you go down to this small part here and blew it up, you would find it is the exact same as it is here. And that's the fact that fractals show you repetitive patterns that allow for continuation of things. What gets interesting is not only does this occur in inanimate objects like mountain ranges, sea waves, that sort of thing, It also occurs in living tissue. This is following a fractal model. This example here where someone took a chip and designed an antenna on it. These antennas used to be the antennas that you think about, the old satellite antennas that people had in their yard that were 10 and 15 feet across. These particular examples here, these are not just data antennas, these also can pick up transmissions for voice, picture, and print. And all these are different antennas, and the size on this is very small. It will literally fit within a phone. And if you look and find that the same pattern occurs in nature with many animals, most animals, including us, our brain, our heart, our lungs, our kidneys, all follow fractal mathematics in their development. What makes this interesting is you begin to see patterns in proteins occurring, and you learn about information about how inflammation causes changes in protein structure and what's called unfolded protein response. You begin to get a window into ideas of what can be done to address nutrition and specifically micronutrients and satiety of sufficient nutrients to allow for an individual to actually do better than just get by. All of these senses follow fractal mapping. What becomes interesting is when you appreciate the fact that evolution doesn't stop when you're born. You continue to evolve. You evolve your entire life. Until you're dead, you're still evolving. And what's interesting about that is as the triage theory, as those models are looked at, and as we consider even the orthomolecular model of nutrition, we begin to realize you can make an intervention to change the course of somebody's evolution by eliminating deficiencies in certain nutritions and eliminating inflammatory patterns that cause altered protein response. You can truly make a difference in somebody's life. I know this is a lot of information, and I break it down because I find that patients, once they understand how they can become controlling factors in their own life and their own health, they're allowing themselves the opportunity to truly be healthy with. Hello, Dr. Bob Smith here. It's amazing when you think about it how much information has changed and developed over the last year, 5 years, 15 years, 50 years, that point to the understanding of how nutrition as a science, and specifically the interplay between us and our bacteria in our intestines and all of our genes and those bacterial genes, either upregulate and produce things that make us exceedingly healthy or play a part in making us not so healthy. Part of it's what we eat, part of it's what the bacteria produce as byproducts. All of those come into play. And the only education we can actually use now to help ourselves literally is the education that gives us a background that lets us understand how this works and do it in a way that we can use it in our own daily lives. That's what I try to give people an opportunity to understand, so they have a foundation to understand when they're making choices about food, about supplements, about anything when it comes relating to their health and activities, so they know up front that this is going to be a good or great idea for me for the long term to keep me in better shape and feeling better. These are the sort of problems we face in addressing and trying to get answers on how to be healthy. And I'm Dr. Bob Smith. I would like to help you in your journey to find better health and nutrition along the way. Give us a call.